Angus Young, how you doing?
Good, Becko.
The Offspring.
How's it going, Becko?
Dave Grohl, how you going, mate?
Good, man.
Pete, it's been a long time coming.
Oh, Becko, hasn't it indeed?
We go inside the dressing room, speak to the biggest names in music,
Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones.
and crack open their esky.
This is exactly how I imagined you, by the way, sitting opposite me with a vodka and orange.
You're a discerning chap. This is The Rider.
Well, we've made it to Ep 3. Here we are. Hey, it's Becko. Welcome back to The Rider. We've had a couple of great episodes so far. You can catch up with Andrew Farris from In Excess, episode 1. And last week was Ben Lee from LA on Zoom. We had a great catch-up. He's got a new album coming out, I'm Fun, which is out in June. And you can find out why the album has been delayed until mid-next year. Get that right now on the podcast on all platforms. I want to start off with talking about the new Beatles documentary, which is out on Disney+, and you can now go and check it out. It's a true fly-on-the-wall reflection of what was happening at the end of the Beatles' career. And this was meant to be a documentary / live performance, and it was meant to be a live performance somewhere in an amphitheatre, maybe in sort of Northern Africa, but this would end up being the lead up to their final performance on the rooftop of Apple Studios. And it is so interesting watching all this happen. They started off by writing a bunch of songs in a big soundstage in Twickenham, which didn't really work for them. It was only when they moved into their own studios, you could see them having fun and they were getting along and they were writing some amazing songs. And one of the highlights was seeing Paul McCartney come up with Get Back, just with nothing. He just came up with a riff and then all of a sudden started sort of throwing some harmonies in there. He then got some lyrics and they built on that. And it's just so interesting to watch this all come together and all these songs that we have grown up with and all the chaos that went with it. Now, on Stephen Colbert on The Late Show, he caught up with Peter Jackson, who is the director of this. And first of all, asking the question, why has it been on the shelf for so long?
The Beatles have suppressed this footage. They have never intended anybody to see it. They didn't. They don't want anyone to see it. And this
What changed it?
I haven't had this conversation with them, but I get the strong feeling that they now feel that it's time for history to take dominance over their personal feelings. You know, they understand, totally understand the historic importance of this footage, the amazing historic treasure trove, and they feel that after 50 years it should come out.
So it kind of feels like the Beatles are ready to have this out there, ready to have it public and on record, which is so interesting. Now, another moment which we saw in the documentary was a conversation between George and John. And George was ready to go solo, but he didn't want to give up on the Beatles.
I'm thinking I might just like to do an album on my own. Just get my songs out of the way. And John says, what, you mean all by yourself? And he said, well, yeah, I'd like to, it'd be great to do an album where all my songs are on an album and I can, hear what that like. And John says, yeah, that would be great. That was fantastic. And he says, well, I can, we'll still do the Beatle thing. And John says, yeah, we can, George does a solo album and then the Beatles do an album. Paul didn't hear that conversation in 1969. He didn't know that even happened. He sees the film and I ask him, and you know what Paul said to me? He said, I wish I knew that they said that at the time.
That is so interesting that Paul obviously didn't know that conversation happened and maybe history would have changed if they'd all come to an agreement. So go and check it out. Get Back. It's on Disney+, and it's long. And you're probably going to have to break it up into halves. The episodes are so long and detailed, but it is a great account of the history of the Beatles, so go and check it out. Now, this week in The Rider, we have an Aussie legend on Zoom from Milan.
You couldn't avoid Jet. They sold 6.5 million records, and it all started and ended with this guy.
So we know him as the lead man of Jet. He's had solo albums lately. He worked with the Jaded Hearts Club with Matt Bellamy from Muse, which ended up being quite an amazing release. But now it's time for his new album, which is actually a soundtrack to a children's book, which he kind of wrote with his daughter. It's called Skipping Girl, and it's out now. So this really was a project for him and his daughter while they were in lockdown in Italy. They got an illustrator to make the book. He came up with the story. He wrote the music. He has grand plans to take it live with, an orchestra and a proper huge band. It's a really amazing project, so you can go and check it out now, called Skipping Girl. But let's go to Zoom right now. I can see his face popping up right now. Is that you, Nic Cester?
Hi.
Nic Cester from Jet, all the way from Milan. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. It's pretty cold here. Winter's arrived, but
I'm good.
I've got to say congratulations on this project. A children's book with the accompanying soundtrack. And I've read the book while listening to the music, and it's just beautiful. I can't describe it any other way. It just is.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You did this while in lockdown, but then obviously went and recorded it once you were out of lockdown in Rome.
Yeah, well, to be honest, like it was an idea that I'd had for a very, very, very long time. And I'd been writing, I mean, I write songs all the time, you know, and I kind of often find myself in melancholic states. Whenever I wrote a song in that mood, I would sort of file it away thinking there'll be a time when I'll get back to that. And then fast forward 10, 15 years, I realized that I'd had more than enough songs to make an album out of. And I was just searching for an interesting way to present this material because I knew it was quite different from what I usually do, or what I'm associated with. And, you know, just at this stage in my life and career, I've already done quite a lot of things. So I was looking for a new, interesting way to present an album or a body of music that might have another layer to it, or just, you know, an enhanced, you know, because it's about storytelling really. And the music is, you're communicating emotions or ideas or feelings. And I thought if I coupled that with a book, then it might enhance that communication.
Oh, it's really smart. And I have to admit, when the press release came out, I was thinking it's a kid's album. And then the more I read about it and the more I listened, I realized it's a kid's book, but it's one that you can interact with your kids as an adult.
It's true. I mean, I guess when you, I mean, just like a song, you know, like a single, I guess, if you are able to boil it, the song or the idea or the communication down to its essential ingredients, then it can kind of transcend times and age groups. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Last time I caught up with you, we were talking about the Jaded Hearts Club band and how you met Matt Bellamy and how it all happened. You were a wedding band and all of a sudden you're in a studio and that was sort of one half of COVID.
Well, I'd been chipping away at this on and off for like over 10 years, I guess, like the songwriting part of it. And then when I found myself in the lockdown, I mean, the good thing about the Jaded Hearts is it's first of all, it's covers and I'm just the singer. So, you know, my work is over with very quickly. So I had a lot of time on my hands to and I'd finished an album. Like I'd already finished because I've done one solo album and I'd finished the second one and it was about to release it. And then the pandemic happened and I thought, I can't put this out now. So I was looking for something else to do and I found myself coming back. And it was the perfect moment because, you know, I mean, at the core of the story is this girl who's stuck in a loop, which is a metaphor for a lot of things. It could be, you know, alcoholism or an unhealthy relationship or a job that you don't like, or being stuck in a pandemic, you know?
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
So it just felt like the perfect time. And, you know, and also it's very wintry and autumnal, that music. And that's, you know, I mean, it was a year ago now and I'm looking out my window now and it's gray and miserable and rainy and it's, you know, it's that kind of mood.
And for those who don't know much about it, I mean, in Melbourne, it's an iconic landmark is the Skipping Girl neon sign, which has been there, geez, I don't know, for maybe 100 years or longer.
It's 1936, I found out.
It was one of the first things I saw when I first came to Melbourne. I got my job there and you'd often meet near there before you go to the MCG. And I mentioned half of these songs, like imagine strolling along the Yarra in around autumn or winter and it was the soundtrack of that, but also the soundtrack of this girl who's sort of lost, you know, trying to find her place. Yeah. And how did you find the person to do the illustrations?
It's quite pragmatic, to be honest. Like I had ideas of who I would like to work with, and obviously not being my field, I was quite naive as to how the whole process worked. And I thought it'd be great to do it with this guy or that guy. And I made calls, and then when I finally found a publisher that was interested in contributing, they said, Nick, it doesn't work like this. You know, like so each publishing house has a pool of illustrators that they prefer to work with. But luckily the one that they suggested, I happened to have a bunch of, because I have a 3-year-old daughter. So we realized that we'd already had a bunch of books that he'd illustrated in our house. So it was quite easy. I mean, he's amazing. He's a very incredibly talented guy and he did a beautiful, beautiful job.
Really did. I'm assuming it's been a beautiful time as well with the family in lockdown. I mean, obviously it's got its limits and you want to go out and play music and whatever, but you must have really enjoyed it.
It's really true because, and I just said this yesterday to someone, like, And I kind of feel a bit guilty saying this because I know that a lot of people, particularly here in Europe, really struggled. And there's a lot of people who, some people really went through hell. My situation was a little bit more fortunate. And, to be honest, like after living a life when I'm constantly traveling and away from home a lot, and, having a 1.5-year-old daughter at the time, it was nice to just have my life put on pause and to have that time to be at home to begin a relationship with my daughter, because also at that time, the first year is just mama, mama, mama. And then all of a sudden she's aware of my existence right in that moment. So it was a very beautiful period, I have to say. And, being able to test out the germs of the ideas of this story on her every night she's still convinced to this day that it's her and it's her story and she's the girl in the book. So, which is cute too.
Never tell her, but I'm glad you got that project to work on, with her. Is there a part of you though yearning for the suitcase lifestyle again? You keen to get out?
I don't know. I get pretty comfortable, to be honest, and the idea of being away for large, like big lengths of time is it'll be tough. It'll be tough to it's just because I'm in a different loop now. My loop now is being at home with my family, and it'll be hard to break out of that one. I'm
assuming the family do want to see you in Melbourne at some stage.
I'm sure my wife would be more than happy to see me leave.
Yeah. The soundtrack is great, and you've put a lot of time into it and everything. Did you see yourself in some of these songs? I mean, I'm listening to it.
I mean, at the core of a lot of songs is elements of truth from my own life, but definitely this story, probably more so than anything I've ever done before, speaks very largely to my life and my experiences. I mean, every song, at the core of it, yeah, like being stuck in first of all, the fact that I recognized that was potentially a metaphor for someone stuck in a loop was because that's how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
And then expanding on that, every song in the album is more or less an episode in the life of this character. And at the core of every song is also some truth or message or something that I've learned along the way that I'm dressing it up in a way that I would like to impart some sort of wisdom to my daughter when she's old enough to sort of understand what's going on there.
And this was your first time out of Milan at lockdown, because Italy was hit so hard with COVID. It was a proper lockdown.
It really was. I mean, it's different. It's different to the way it was, because obviously I've been speaking with my family and friends in Australia, specifically Melbourne, but yeah, very different experience here. First of all, the fact that it unfolded in real time, so there wasn't this heightened sense of anxiety that I think perhaps happened in Australia when you could see this threat arriving. Like it just happened here one day and it just unfolded. And also the way that people live here is very different. It's a lot more of a cramped living style, people in apartments, small spaces, people living on top of each other. In our apartment block alone, there's a lot of families and a lot of people. We had a few deaths of some of our neighbors and ambulances going past every day. So it was intense. It was definitely intense.
Italy seemed to recover pretty quickly, which was good. And you had all these songs ready to go. How did you get the orchestra? I think it was track 2 with Forever. It was beautiful.
Yeah, there's to be honest, I knew that this was the kind of album that would be greatly enriched by the inclusion of an orchestra or orchestrations. And I had a good friend of mine who I asked if he could help with the arrangements, and he said yes. And I said, where are we going to do this? And the obvious choice was to do it in Milan, where we live, but there was no studios available. So he said, why don't we go to Rome and do it in Ennio Morricone's studio? And I thought he was joking. And as it turns out, that's actually an option. And so we made some calls, and then a few weeks later we were there, which was that's unbelievable. First of all, after the lockdown broke and I was able to leave, first of all, my house and then my city, and then go to Rome, and restaurants were open there. So it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then to be in a historic studio by one of the absolute greats of all times, being Ennio Morricone, the whole experience was just, it was an overload of everything.
Restaurants are open, so it was an overload of culture and wine and carbonara.
It was ridiculous. It was like just the most Italian experience, cliched Italian experience of my life.
But did they charge you for tap water? Because that was my one memory of Rome, where it's
Right.
like, oh my God, they charge you for tap water.
We weren't drinking a lot of water, I can tell you.
So much has changed. I mean, you're a family man now, and you're loving it. Obviously, really, really happy. But the wild days, I guess, of the Get Born tour, it's almost infamous now. Like when you were going through America, that's still talked about how wild that was.
Yeah. I know things can still get pretty, there's still a lot of fun to be had even at 40. I think so much was done. There was so much excess back then that there's definitely a feel like, all right, that's, been there, done that. And the novelty wears off doing even if it's something that's extremely fun, you do it enough times and it's going to become a bit repetitive and boring too. But that being said, there's still a lot of fun to be had.
There's bands like In Excess who have said that, going for America, they had all these bands along the way who were supporting them, and they had no idea how hardworking Australian bands are. It's what you're brought up on. You're used to doing not just one show a day, but 2 or 3 sometimes.
Yeah,
and it's a work ethic.
It's true. We definitely noticed like there's definitely a difference in culture that we noticed, like particularly during America, where we were a bit more roll up your sleeves and get to work, and no matter what state we were in, we would always perform. There were no cancellations. There was no, we definitely we did it hard.
And fast forward to now, and this is a sort of nice little legacy thing for your daughter as well, because she won't probably remember this time or much of it.
In some ways, it is a collaboration. Not that she was directly involved, but definitely a big part of everything. It's for her, essentially. It's for her. It's about me, but it's for her.
There were plans to do this live with the screening or a book reading kind of deal. Is there a chance of that happening?
Oh, I would be doing a show. It's not announced yet, but I just found out yesterday that I'll be doing a show, which I'm very excited about, which is, the famous opera house in Milan called La Scala. Not there, but next door to that, which is a very beautiful theatre in itself, which will be announced, I think, tomorrow. Just so I'm coming back to Australia finally for the first time in years now that they've opened things up, me and my girls, on the 10th of December, which would be amazing.
That's
so
great.
The week before that, we finally get to do my first concerts ever, to showcase this album with a little orchestra in this beautiful theatre in Milan, and then we'll be back to Australia after that, which would be amazing.
Mate, that's great. So you'll be back for Christmas, see the family and everything?
Yeah. We're very happy about that.
Can we book in a show to pay for your expenses? Can we put you in the corner hotel?
Unfortunately, this project, doing a show, every show is a loss because there's so many musicians on the stage,
Yeah. There's no such thing as doing an acoustic performance of the album.
No, it's really hard. Well, I did a little in-store yesterday in a bookshop, which in itself was an interesting experience, but I would love to. I really would love to. I hope something like that can happen. Yeah,
it would be a bizarre experience signing a book as opposed to signing a CD.
It's just such a different world. It's very sober, like in a bookshop with mums and kids and but it's it's great though. It's interesting.
Yeah. But look, before we go, the podcast is called The Rider for obvious reasons. You ask what's going on when you go backstage, what's in the esky, what is normally in the rider, what do you demand?
The Jet Rider was quite famous once upon a time for the absurd quantity, which we somehow managed to finish every day. I don't know how we did that.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I don't know, just some wine. Wine is enough, man. Just a bottle of wine is good.
Well, you have to tell me what was in the Jet Rider. You can't just tease me with that.
I don't know how much time you have, but because we got to a point where we were looking at the budget and we're like, why is all this costing so much? And then the tour manager sat down with us. He goes, guys, have you seen your rider? And it was just pages and stuff. It was everything. It was one of everything, basically.
Because this is the thing that young bands don't often realize is you go, oh yeah, just put it on the rider. You don't realize you got to pay it back.
Yeah, we're paying for that. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It was very much a party band, Jet. So we would have, the show was just quite often the annoying interruption to the party.
Yeah. Well, Nick, it's great to catch up with you, and thanks for fitting me in. And look, congratulations on the release. It really is just a great bunch of songs, and I think everyone's going to appreciate that accompanying the book as well.
Nice one. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Oh, mate, thanks for your time. Have a great day over there.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man. All right, see ya. Well, there we go. Nic Cester, a very different project than what we're used to from him, and an amazing creation that's going to be kind of a legacy for him, especially for his relationship with his daughter as well. As he said, she believes she's the character of the book. You can check it out right now. It is called Skipping Girl. It is out. Nick's going to be back over here around Christmas, and I'm sure there'll be some performances to come in 2022 from him. So there we go. Ep 3 of The Rider. Thank you so much for hitting subscribe or following the last few episodes. We're back again next week. We always pop it up on a Monday. Another couple of great guests still to come. And I really appreciate you checking it out. You can follow also on Instagram. The Rider Pod is where you can find that and get updates as I go. This has been The Rider with Becko. I'll catch you again next week.